Hello, friends. Welcome to our weekly Data Talk, a show where we talk with data science leaders from around the world. Today, we're talking to Vlasios Vasileiou. He is the chief scientist at Experian DataLabs and UK&I and EMEA. Vlasios, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you.
So we were just chatting about the Experian Innovation Center. And can you share a little bit about the workspace that you're in?
Actually we moved a couple of months ago, and it's a pretty interesting place. We're in the middle of London in the financial district, and we're actually near the top of a skyscraper. So we're at the 34th floor, and we're very near the plane or the level of the airplanes because the city airport is in range.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we're on our own, and it's a pretty interesting place.
That's cool. That's cool. So you must have a beautiful view of the city.
Yeah. It's clear view. One side, which can see St. Paul's Cathedral, Canary Wharf. You can see far away all the big skyscrapers around. It's a big privilege, actually.
That's awesome. What's the feeling or the atmosphere like being in the Data Lab, the Innovation Center there?
So the Data Lab, we are within our own, let's say, enclosed space next to the big meeting rooms of the Innovation Center. Inside the Data Lab, I would say it's very geeky. Because, most of us are academics, we're on our computers, we talk about papers, there are questions all around. And the rest of the Innovation Center is made to demonstrate in a very, would say, visually and impactful way, or the cool products that all of Experian is doing. So you can imagine there are huge screens all around, you're surrounded by screens, and you have big touch panels that you interact by placing things on them, and then you can navigate through graphs of databases. It's pretty fancy.
That's really, really cool. Yeah. All right, so I want to transition to talk about your background, because I was looking at your LinkedIn profile and was just blown away by your academic experience and the work you've done. So I wonder if you can kind of take us back. I noticed that from everything from your bachelor's degree, your master's, and your PhD, it's all in physics. And I'm kind of curious about what drove you into physics so early on in your life.
All right. So let's start from the beginning. So it's physics and all the major physics and all the little flavors, particle physics, astrophysics, particle astrophysics. So the beginning of time, I'm Greek. In Greece, all children stargaze in the summers. So you stay, in the night, you look at the stars, the sky is clean. It's clear, and you say, okay, what's up there? Why, how? So all the curiosity for the natural world comes up. And then, from all the subjects, all the things I could have done, I was really good at computers. But I also, I knew I would have computers no matter what, because I have my computer, I type my programs, and I, get satisfied. But the physics, I think you need to study that topic to really get into it. So I went into physics in Greece as an undergraduate, and then in the last years you specialize. So there I really like the particle astrophysics side of things. So it combines nuclear particle physics applied on the astrophysical world. Wow. So that was my specialization. After that I got hooked up. Yeah.
That is so cool. So I love how your love of nature and the stars and just a curiosity early on led to all of your studies in mathematics and physics. And then, so you finished your bachelor's degree, and like you mentioned, you were specializing in the particle physics and looking into astrophysics. After you finished your bachelor's, you then immediately went into a master's program?
So last year of bachelor's, I did the summer internship at the CERN, where the big European accelerator is at Switzerland, where they found the Higgs.
Oh.
It's also, a big boost to my dedication, because I was surrounded with all these, cool people, scientists, science, big machines around me. And then I said, okay, I want to go to PhD. The States, American universities, to me, then, were by far the best. So I went directly for a PhD program in University of Maryland. And then, at the beginning, when you go to American universities for a PhD, you do some coursework at the beginning. You learn a bit more advanced physics, which is the equivalent of master's. You pass your qualifying exam, and then you become the PhD candidate. So I did everything in Maryland.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So you basically went in right in when you went to Maryland. It was already determined that you're going to get your PhD.
Yeah. I went in the PhD program.
What was it about the University of Maryland program that interested you? Because you had your choice.
I had choice. This was, well, when you are in foreign country, you don't have many data points, let's say. So 2 data points that I had was one, the different reports of university rankings, and the other was one of my professor in Greece, used to be at Maryland as a PhD student. He told me really good things about it. So I said, okay, both data points are positive. So I went there.
Oh, very good. What advice would you give for young data scientists or people that are in their bachelor's degree right now and they're interested in taking the path to get their master's or PhD and they're looking for a good graduate program? What would be your advice for these young students when choosing a program?
I would say before you choose a program, decide whether you want to do the program, any program, because going for a PhD is a very big commitment. In the States, it's 5 years, the master's and the PhD program. And one can imagine maybe, let's say, alternative paths of, going straight to industry, maybe better for some people. So be very conscious of the choice before you make it. Yeah. And also know that I would say there is a misconception that all academics have, we have when we are in the PhD program, we think that most of us will get an academic position for research. So if you ask, 90% will say, I'll become a permanent researcher somewhere, but only, 5% of us, manage to do it, or a place that we're really happy. So these things have to be in people's heads before they decide to make the choice. Now, if you make the choice, I would say don't focus too much on the public rankings like I did. Talk to people instead. Talk to ex-graduates, talk to professors. I also sent some random emails, out of the blue to some of the professors to the universities, asking them, hey, how's your research? How are things there? Just to get the feeling how, the target institution would be.
Oh, that's good. That's good. Did you already know what area you wanted to specialize in when you were choosing the graduate program? Did you know that you wanted to go into astrophysics?
Yeah, I knew the narrow area because I already had some kind of specialization in particle, nuclear, or astrophysics. So it would be something then. It wouldn't be, for example, solid state physics. It wouldn't be, theoretical physics, and optical. Yeah. Most of the times people have an idea. Let's say a quarter of the possible topics are prioritized.
Now, so as you mentioned, it's a huge commitment. I mean, you're going to be in school. You're going to be also probably being a teacher assistant, teaching undergraduates in the program. You're doing just tons of research. What was like during your busiest period, what was like your life like? Like, can you kind of break down your schedule? Because you're
so those years, so I did teaching assistantship for 1 semester, the first semester. After that, I started talking to professors. So I found a group that I really liked. So after the second semester, out of, let's say, the 10 total, from second to the last one, I was in research. So I was a research assistant. So I was doing my coursework at the beginning, homework and all these things. And then the rest of the day, I was in the lab with the rest of the PhD students and the postdocs and the staff doing research itself. Then, there when you go, now, I don't know, things may be different. The stipend is very, very small. So you need to live a bit, the middle of nowhere. You don't have much social life. You study a lot. So those years are a bit special. That's why you need the commitment, right?
That's right. So you then, you get your PhD in this super advanced program. You have so many options. You mentioned that a lot of people go into teaching or continue in research. What was your thought process when you finished your PhD?
During the last years of my PhD, I had the needs of going to the industry. Yeah. So at that point, I was on and off evaluating positions in New York City, to be a quant in the financial industry. I was sending CVs, I was considering, but then because I had my connections, the NASA center that I did my first postdoc was next to the university. they knew me, I knew them, there was good connection. So, if you're going to have an opportunity to go to NASA, you go. So I took it.
That's amazing. So how did that connection first happen with NASA?
Yeah. So the university is it was the suburb of Washington, D.C., in College Park. There is a NASA Goddard Space Flight Center at College Park, actually in Greenbelt, which is next door. And there is a lot of exchange. We go there, we give talks. NASA people come to our university, they give talks. One of the NASA staff, actually the person who made me an offer to go there, was in my PhD committee. So, she knew me really well. I would say utilize this close network with the NASA center and, to make the move.
That's awesome. What was it like working at NASA?
I remember it was pretty special because, you drive there, you go through the gates, it's NASA center. And, there are some huge buildings so to give you some background, the center I was focusing on astrophysics. Yeah, there are some centers, that have all the control centers for, the lunar module, or some centers create the satellites. We focused on the astrophysics, and we were also creating some part of the astrophysical observatories. Yeah, so satellites that just measure different rays from the sky. So there I was I would say it was building 2, which was as far as I know, it was the second one, and was involved in all the major observatories. And some of the rooms, they had the old names. So, for example, now it's called the Astrophysics Division. Back then, it was called the Exploration of the Universe Division.
I like that.
So you go to the meeting room, to have a meeting or give a talk, and you see that, and it feels a bit like, Star Trek,
That's right.
And many of the people I was working with, or, next door or the office, they were pretty famous in the astrophysical circle names. When I went, I was in the office with an astrophysicist. His name was David Band, and in the research I was doing in gamma ray burst, one of the spectra for gamma ray burst has his name, because the Band. So it's like, you are with a person that, his name named the equation.
Gee whiz.
Yeah.
Oh my God. So was it, so it must have been just an amazing period working with all these amazing people.
Yeah.
And you were there for like 2.5, 3 years?
Yeah, almost 3 years, yeah.
Wow. So you had just a phenomenal opportunity, and we're working with some amazing people and just contributing your mind to, like you said, the exploration of the universe, basically, which is just fascinating. What was your workload like? What was your day like?
Yeah, it was lighter than the PhD program, but it was still pretty heavy, I would say. The good thing was that it was pleasant kind of work. You're on the computer, you talk to smart people, you have cool meetings, you read papers. So it's, I would say, long time-wise, but for the most part, pretty pleasant.
So you were, I guess this was almost like a continuation of your PhD, because now you're just continuing with your research and advancing science at this point. So then what were you then thinking? So you did like a nice tour there, about 3 years at NASA. What was like your thought process on what to do next?
So next, there was, there is the scientific aspect. There is also the personal. So for personal reasons, I wanted to go back to Europe. Sadly, at that time, 2008, Greece was not doing great. 2010, where it wasn't doing great. So the best place, I think, that combined Europe and astrophysics, what I was doing, was in France. There I went to have another postdoc for 3 years at the south of France, at Montpellier, beautiful city. And there I knew the group. We were also working together. I knew they were a strong group. Also France were pretty strong in the gamma ray particle astrophysics. France and Germany were the main places in Europe that were doing that. So I think it was a really good continuation of what I was doing that could eventually lead to a permanent position.
So were you at this point, because you have pretty much just you were in school, getting your PhD, then continuing research and working for NASA, then you're doing a postdoc program. Your life has been in the research mode, academia.
Yeah.
And what then started to drive you more towards like working in industry?
So the thing was that, maybe in many disciplines this happens, but definitely in astrophysics, after a while you learn all the statistics, you learn the codes and all the things you are supposed to apply. And for the most part, it's a repetition of the same thing. Maybe you get a new instrument, it's stronger, maybe, some new technique comes in, or maybe some new capability. For the most part, at least statistically and algorithmically, you are in a narrow field. Yeah. So it depends on what the person cares most about. After a while, I started focusing a lot on the how than on the what, And I wanted to learn more statistics, more machine learning, wider selection of programming languages. So I said, you can either become a quant or you can become a data scientist, the new thing. Data scientist is, pretty wide. And also it has the commercial aspect, the programming aspect. I liked all of them. Maybe quant is a bit more specific to the subject matter of finance, option pricing, algorithmic trading, all these things. So I started thinking about data science roles. And then, you're in France. I think the best place in Europe, by far is London for data science. Maybe there were some other places now, Berlin, Amsterdam, they're pretty strong too. But London is by far the best. So, I made the decision to go there and I start preparing for the jump to industry and data science.
Wow. I just love that you are just naturally extremely curious. You love learning. And so,
Yes.
I mean, just the fact that you were just like constantly in doctoral programs, postdoctoral programs, researching, and then you're like, okay, I've learned everything I possibly can around my specific field. Now I want to like learn this new space of data science and the programming languages, and that really interested you. And I think this is around the time where the kind of the term data science was kind of emerging. I mean, the practice has been around for a long time, but the term data science, and so you start to like now you're focused in on data science, the languages, and what was coming from the astrophysics realm. Now studying data science, what was like your vision for like what you'd like to do next?
So coming from astrophysics, so as I said, I wanted to learn more, and also I appreciated the fact of being a bit more practical and faster on the delivery. Because if you think about the academic world and the industrial world, there is a bit of gap. So I mentioned the gap on the breadth, let's say, of the approaches. However, there is a gap on what you're trying to accomplish. And I think I like this gap. So to be more specific. So in academia, the final product is the paper. Yeah, the final product is the paper.
That's right.
And the paper, a proper paper has to be comprehensive, all the caveats being accounted for, checked, the details. You need to have a historical review. You need to publish a paper that has a meaningful impact. You contribute new knowledge. Yeah, so this is the paper, and the paper can take a year, 2 years, 6 months, long time. In industry, the final the product that you care about when you start is the MVP. Yeah, so the MVP has shortcuts, caveats. Yeah, some are risky, some are not. It's a bit more risk based. You need to hit the deadlines. A paper can take long term. We'll do it next year, or it's okay. But in industry, it's a bit more straight. Let's do it. I'm a bit like that, so I really like that, and I was looking forward to it.
And you obviously have so many options. You could work anywhere you want to. I'm kind of curious about what led you eventually to Experian.
To Experian. So between I was at Zopa, but Experian. So after academia, I went to small startup in which I managed to contribute a lot. But the company was, the size of the company was of the order of 100 people. Experian, and on the other hand, is a global company. You have a lot of data. You have a lot of scope, leverage, and you can actually move things. Yeah. So while maybe in a startup you can have, impact that is very focused, in Experian, what we do at the lab that I'm working in, when we create a new product, this product has capability of being deployed globally, be used by hundreds of millions of people, of making millions in revenues. This big scope and impact is really appealing compared to where I was. This is one thing. The second is that the role was a bit closer to state of the art, because the data lab in Experian that I'm in is an R&D lab applied on that is meant to create the new products that Experian will be selling the next years, which means there is a lot of potential of innovation. Per se, there is no P&L. Our P&L is not in terms of, let's say, pounds made tomorrow or by the client tomorrow. It's in terms of potential millions in the depth of time. It's a big difference. And there you have the capability and the remit to focus and try some really crazy ideas that nobody in Experian may have even heard of, and really transform the company itself. So it's a bit different. You're in a startup, you really need to be really focused. There's, the product, money, finishing, and all these things, which it has its own beauty. This I lived for 4 years when I was in my first industrial position. Now in Experian, I have the opportunity to innovate and be a bit more free of what I can do. And some of the big bets can be global impactful products. So it's a pretty unique place.
That's cool. What do you do to kind of keep the enthusiasm and the creativity and the innovation alive with the team members there?
So it depends on the time. So Experian, as you know, maybe for our audience, we have a big competition, the CRM competition, in which the most innovative ideas and solutions from Experian get compete and win. So one big milestone is for the CRM competition for all of us to really open our minds, like maybe like half a year earlier or a few months, open our minds and try to have really big impactful things. This one. After the CRM competition, what I do is I copy what the big tech companies, technology companies do, like Google. I let the data scientists, I give them, let's say, guys, one Friday every 2 weeks, stay home, come to the office, read any paper, prototype something, do whatever you want, okay? It doesn't have to be directly in finance or anything. Open up your mind and then come and discuss what we have. So we read blogs, we read podcasts, we have our secret dreams of a startup that we can, try in the lab. So little ideas come from there.
I love that.
Yeah.
So your team is already kind of, for these big competitions, already kind of planning months in advance, like thinking about, okay, what's possible? What can we do to improve products, to create something brand new that could really help society and or help businesses with their work? When you are looking to bring on more people for your team, because you're wanting to bring in the best, the brightest, what are some things you're looking for? Because you're interviewing, I'm sure, lots of different people coming through. They want to work for you. They want to work at Experian. They want to join your team. What are some things that you're looking for as you are talking with data scientists? Because this is a big question that we get in our community on Facebook.
Yeah, I can give some of my secrets.
Yeah, please.
To start, one is after I joined about a year and a half ago. We hired a few people, and the ratio of CVs I get from the recruiters to offers, it's about 1 every 100.
Oh, wow.
Really aggressive. And you can imagine the recruiters are not top of the funnel, so they already done a lot of work themselves. So what kind of things I'm looking for depends on the level. Yeah, so, first of all, everybody should have good attitude. Yeah, they need to be, they shouldn't be sloppy. They should be, hardworking, easy to, communicate, pleasant. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, the most junior people, typically let's say if we interview a recent PhD person who has some exposure to programming, numerical computation, all these things, but he hasn't done all the things that data science, machine learning involves. what I do is I say, okay, if I trust this person to know their own topic really well, then I should trust them after a while to learn the new topic of machine learning, statistics, data science really well too. So for the unlucky people who have done a physics PhD, sometimes because I understand the topic well, I ask them physics questions. So, answer questions about your dissertation very clearly and expressive way. If you can do it, I don't know the statistical technique or, what decision trees do so much. If you don't know your own stuff, then it's kind of... Now, another aspect is dedication. Because you finish from college, you have a PhD. If I see in your CV that you have participated in competitions of data science, let's say in Kaggle, if I see a portfolio of, let's say, Jupyter Hub notebooks that you have downloaded, public data sets, you played with them, you visualized, you did the model, let's say, in GitHub, that would be a beautiful thing to see. Because I will go check all your code. It will save me half of the interview. I can see how you code. I can see how dedicated you are. If you have actually written a blog about your data science explorations and teaching yourself machine learning, that would also be a beautiful thing to do. So the question is for all the, I would say, juniors or transitioning people to show the dedication, have your portfolio out. Yeah. For the most advanced people, then the question is a bit different. It's not just how well I know the theory of data science, but then other parts go in. How well can you communicate with engineers? Yeah, because your data science are always involved in the first parts of implementation. Do you know about the terminology? Have you been involved in wider teams? How commercial you are? That's, for the elite, let's say, data science and above, you need to be a bit commercial because when you need to decide how to implement something, there are many different ways. Sometimes you do some crazy deep learning thing that is beautiful, or it might be the most predictive, but what is your target? Are you trying to persuade, I don't know, maybe some person who have been doing on logistic regression scorecards or the life, let's say, there's going to be a gap there. How realistic you are when you implement something. Because in EMEA, as we said, the final product is the perfect paper. In industry, you need to know which corners to cut. You need to know how to, let's say, in an agile way, how to deploy something in iterative refinement fashion. All these things you ask, because they say, you have done this and that and that. Okay, tell me, how did it start? How did it finish? What were the compromises? What aspects do you like about your work, you don't like about your work? So if they can clearly articulate all these things, it means they have thought about them, they're aware of the different aspects of a data scientist. So I would say eventually data scientists become a bit more comprehensive kind of animal, let's say. It's not just, there is a lot of other things you need to develop.
Yeah, that's a lot. I think those are that's really good advice. Have you noticed any unique challenges that people have that are just coming out of their PhD programs or graduate school, and it's their first time working in industry, and you just notice that they need some help in specific areas, just kind of generally about just being in a workplace?
I would say a bit, sometimes the communication, how you present your work, and you work with engineers, with product people, with business stakeholders, compliance, because even if you're the most junior, one way or another, you're going to have exposure to different kinds of non-academic people. This is one. Second, the dedication is not always clear. Sometimes there was a time when the LHC finished, for example, and all the PhDs were, the first data come out from the accelerator, people get their PhDs, and now what do we do? So we go to the industry. There was a time, there was a spike of data scientists, ex-PhDs, who were not very sure of what data science is, ex-particle physicists, they were just applying. I mean, it made perfect sense to apply there, but it wasn't a very informed decision. And when they were coming in the interviews, they couldn't articulate, where they're going into, why, and all these things. I would say, and another, let's say, typical thing that I see, which is also a bit red flag, Now, data science is, the statistical machine learning aspect of data science is pretty wide. You can have the basic statistics. You can have maybe like simple models with logistic regression, a single decision tree. You can have random forest. Then you do gradient boosting, and then at the end you have deep learning, reinforcement learning, generative adversarial networks, and all these things. When you say, "Oh, data science is really cool," you read about DeepMind, and I taught some Atari games, and I download, let's say, as a junior data scientist or a wannabe, all these codes that are ready to run, and you do get pretty good results, and that's beautiful thing. However, if you want to be, maybe the best data scientist you can be, you need to start from the basics. Yeah, you need to start. You need to learn to crawl, to walk, to fly, and then do the deep learning AI, self-driving cars. So I would say learn some statistics, learn some basic programming, be really good at Python, for example, or R. Learn the merits and the pros and cons of the simpler models, and then learn all the fancy stuff. Because, let's say, a junior data scientist or an entry-level data scientist who can only do, let's say, the most advanced stuff is maybe a dangerous data scientist, because they may fail. They wouldn't even know why they failed, why the model is wrong. Yeah.
What advice do you have for data scientists as they're beginning to work with leaders, and specifically leaders who have the budget, who can give the approval on a project, but maybe that leader isn't familiar with the data science side, they know the business side, and you need to be able to communicate some very complex topics around data science, coding, right? In a way that's going to make sense for the business leader to make a decision.
So, for the most junior, I would say data scientists, it's better to listen and observe than speak too much. I mean, it's good to be very active and want to show up, but listening initially is really useful. Hear how people talk, hear how the more expert data scientists describe things. For in general, there is this computer science, mantra, it's called KISS, keep it simple, stupid. So, you need to keep it really simple, avoid using any terminology, know your audience. There is also a thing, depending on the company, there is the new model, the Spotify model of how to organize teams, which is the Spotify model. You have multidisciplinary teams around the business problem. There, the data science will sit next to the product person. The product person might be an MBA or an ex-consultant. They might not understand all the technical stuff. The requirements for clear communication are far higher than the bit more traditional model of functional teams. In functional teams, you have all the data scientists in one corner, the engineers in another corner, product people talk on their own. In those cases, you are surrounded by your peers. They can understand what you're talking about, and maybe the most senior of your peers does the translation between product and engineering, and there your life will be easier. So my advice is evaluate your skills of communicating clearly to different kinds of people. See whether you can improve them as much as possible. If not, if you want to be talking just on technical people, try to find a company that doesn't use the Spotify model too much, and make sure you're surrounded by your own kinds of people. And actually, my previous company, we're using the Spotify model. Big requirement for the data scientist to be able to explain things clearly. So one of the questions I would have is, I would say on PhDs, okay, you're a PhD. Tell me about your PhD in very technical terms, like you're talking to your advisor, blah, blah. Great, you know your stuff. Now, let's say, dumb it down. Let's say I'm, a grandma in the village, I don't know about anything you're doing. It is really, really simple,
Yeah.
Can you explain it? If yes, you're great communication, then, anybody. Yeah.
And that's like probably the most difficult thing to do.
It's very difficult, yeah.
To be able to break it down and make it something very simple. To be able to do that is very impressive. Before we go, you're the chief scientist for Experian DataLabs for UK&I and EMEA. Can you talk a little bit about your role, and especially for those maybe who aren't in data science, like how do you explain it to someone in your family who's like, oh, Vlasios, what do you do? What do you do at work?
I'll explain it really simply. So, like grandma in the village. So, I'm the chief scientist of a lab. We have a group of very, very smart people. They do their own scientific stuff. I'm, let's say, like maybe like the daddy or something. Let's say I make sure that what they do is correct, proper. I help them. I make sure they're as effective, the life is as easy as possible. And this is the official chief scientist part. Effectively, I also make sure they can work together with all the external teams that are not inside the lab. I make sure that the things we produce are very useful for different kinds of people, very compliant. So I would say make sure the people that I take care of are as productive and as produce as correct and good things as possible.
I love that. What a great way to put it. I love that. That's very simple. I understand it. Awesome. Vlasios, for those that want to connect with you, follow you on LinkedIn, do you invite connections there?
I mean, whoever wants to connect, I'll accept the connection. My name is pretty unique, so I'm
all right.
Everybody happy to give advice to people who want to enter in data science or want to transition or ask about how it is to work in a big company, financial company, non-financial. I'm always open to help people.
Wonderful. For those that want to connect with Vlasios, I'll make it easy. There's a short URL that you can go to, and it's ex.pn/Vlasios, spelled Vlasios. Again, that's ex.pn/Vlasios, and that will bring you over to Vlasios' LinkedIn profile, where you can connect with him there and follow his posts there on LinkedIn. Vlasios, thank you so much for being on our show today.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for checking out this episode of the Data Talk podcast. My name is Mike Delgado, and we record this show every single week on Facebook Live. If you found this show helpful, please let us know by rating us on iTunes. And if you want to know about past episodes or upcoming ones, you can always go to the Experian blog. The URL is just experian.com/datatalk. Again, that's experian.com/datatalk. And that'll bring you over to the page where we have a listing of all of our show notes and past episodes. We recorded over 100 so far. And we're also looking for your recommendations. So if you ever have suggestions around topics or guests you'd like to hear from, please let us know. You can reach out to us on Twitter. Our Twitter handle is @Experian DataLab, or you can just reach me directly @Mike Delgado. Thanks so much for your support, and thanks so much for subscribing to our shows.